Okay, so we are here today to discuss the vital importance of keeping children in school and on the right track. Unfortunately, we know that when students miss days of school, there are numerous academic outcomes that are impacted, including decreased academic performance and increased likelihood of dropping out of school. We also know that when the source of missed days is a suspension, students are more than twice as likely to be arrested and involved in behavior that leads them into the juvenile justice system. This phenomenon happens so often that the term school-to-prison pipeline has been coined to describe it. This panel will discuss different ways that we can understand the school-to-prison pipeline, and in particular, how effective student discipline can be used to modify problem behavior while keeping our kids in school and on track.
Good morning. I'm Angela Shoemake, the principal of the Morris Davis School of the Arts. Also been high school principal, Albany High School. I've been in this position for 6 years at Lamar Reese. 11 years I taught, but 16 years administration, and then 27 years in education totally. So.
Good morning, I'm Dr. Deborah Wiley. I am currently an 11th grade American literature teacher at Monroe Comprehensive High School. My first experience in the land of the little people. When I started as an educator, it took me 2 weeks in student teaching to realize that wasn't the place I needed to be because I had a quick hand and I would end up in jail. And so now I've found that I'm having to adjust quickly having this experience, but I'm thankful for it because it's given me a different set of lens in which to do the work that I have done for 20 plus years, and that's to educate educators. So I spent a little less than 30 years as an educator across different venues, and now looking that I'm close to the 60 end of my 50s to figure out a way that I can still be a change agent and impact servant leadership. Just not sure what I'm doing now is the answer.
Thank you. So let's give them a hand and thanks for coming to provide us some insight on this most important topic. So the opening question for the panel. All of us can think back to when we were in grade school and something happened that caused us to be disciplined. Okay? Some of us may have to think back a little farther. In your experience, have you seen a change in the way we deal with discipline issues in school? And if so, how do you think the changes that we've made are useful? If not, do you think the change is necessary? So again, have you seen a change in the way we currently deal with discipline issues in school? If so, do you think the changes that we've made are useful? If not, do you think a change is necessary? Okay, so we'll start on the end with our parent.
Speaking from experience, I do think the change that we made is useful. I can remember back when I was in school, you got paddles if you went to the office or suspended, depending on what the problem was. But now I see more children being redirected as far as teachers trying to solve the problem before they call the parent. And if they can't solve the problem, they'll send them to the principal, and the principal solving the problem. And I have 5 children in the school system, and I have one that might have to be redirected more than others. But his teachers have realized that if they give him more responsibilities in the classroom, that keeps him from getting in trouble and acting out. So I think that what we're doing now is actually working because the children are not going home they're still being able to sit in the school setting and learn. So I think that what we're doing is effective.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Next we'll have Mr. Williams.
I agree. My personal experience as a student from West Town Elementary, Mary Acres Middle School, Westover High School, to Georgia Southwestern, I've seen a change because when I was in school, from Ms. Rainey at West Town, she used to paddle me, and there wasn't no question about how I got paddled, or mama raising sand, or dad raising sand. And from that point on to Mary Acres with Mr. Manning, and he was white teachers. So now, now we don't want certain people whooping our children now. But we had no questions about who disciplined our children. Now we're seeing where if you hit a child now, parents will, there's no question about it, challenge you on the issue of why you discipline their child. That's the change I see, and I think it's a problem that we cannot use a village to raise a child now. Parents of the society we're living in is so quick to legalize issues of when you in violation or want to accuse you of being in violation of some type of action. And the number of cases that we are dealing with is ridiculous now when you just hold a child down. The child go home and say, Mama, I have fingerprints on my arm where the teacher hold me. Now the law says that we got to look into it. And you all the first responders, or first reporters, we have to address those issues. And then with the law now, you get labeled as a child abuse and being the system. And there's court cases now that we have teachers in the system that were adjudicated, found that the story was not true, but you still labeled as someone that disciplined a child and abused a child. So we have a different society we're living in now about how we're going to discipline our children.
Thank you. Dr. Schumann.
All right. Well, he named all of his schools. I tell you, I'm all the way from Terra County. Okay, Terra County. But I believe, I just remember one paddling in front of the classroom, and it wasn't my fault. But it didn't matter, because back then, if you were involved in it, guess what? You got it too. And sometimes they would line the entire class up. And depending on what was going on, you got one, too, when you got home. But now I see what we put in place, where it's not only the environment, it was the environment, we came into it, hey, everybody knew you could be disciplined, suspended. I didn't remember anything about ISS. It was OSS, you're out of there. But now we changed the environment. Once you come into the building, it is the expectations that we have now, that you are expected to do right. And instead of talking all the negative stuff, requiring negative behavior, we try to talk about positive things that you can do in order to sort of kind of get it right and to stay in the classroom instead of out of the classroom. And if you notice, once you look and observe your children, there are those who will act up just to go home. Why? Because that PS4 is there. And then when I looked at that, I said, wait a minute, that is not so. So listen, you're in trouble, but I have a place for you right here. And you talking about mad, they would really get upset. But now the culture, the climate is, I better not act up, because guess what? I'm still going to stay at school.
And I have to say, in connection with the word that Mr. Williams used, the behavior issue is problematic. and I'd say problematic, because as I said, in these months that I've been there, teaching it is one thing, going ahead and observing it, I understand real clear, is totally different. But having to engage it day to day, there is a cultural shift that needs to happen. And if I have to revert back to remembering a situation, my class reunions remind me of it all the time. I become the joke at every class reunion, because when I was at Coachman Park Elementary School, I wrote a note and said, and it was real stupid because I had two brothers who were already in school, but you didn't think about that, saying that we would be out of school that day and I didn't have to go to school. Well, they called my mom, and she had just got off third shift at Procter & Gamble, and she dressed, came to school, and she beat me. And I said beat me because there wasn't no whipping. She beat me down in front of the entire class, and then had me to apologize to Ms. Spooner and the class and tell them that I was a thief, a liar, and I stole my mama's name. And that stuck with me forever. Those kinds of actions aren't allowed now. But the things that do happen aren't necessarily the most productive, and I'm happy to hear some of the different things that Mr. Dyer spoke about, as well as others. But there still needs to be, as Dr. Shoemake mentioned, a true cultural change, because there are some things that are happening with children, again, as Mr. Dyer mentioned, that are environmental issues that impact their ability to be able to engage in class appropriately. And those things don't necessarily always get addressed. And when I'm dealing with high school students who see themselves as adults, and you have teacher after teacher, and in all honesty, and I'm a very direct person, I address all of my students as Mr. or Mrs. because I'm going to treat them with the respect I am expecting of them and demanding of them to give me. But when I'm talking to a student about a discipline issue and their response just Thursday, no, that was Thursday morning, Thursday, as a matter of fact, we were talking about it, an issue. And she said to me, Dr. Wiley, if you had, I was telling something I had done to my son. If you had done that to me, my grandmama done that to me, I would have cussed her from A to B. And I had to pause for a minute and rub my chin before I really would give the response that automatically purges out. And I said, Miss, let me repeat to you what you just said. Did you just say to me that you would cuss your grandmama from A to Z if she had done whatever? She said, yes, ma'am. Didn't pause. And other students will murmuring the same thing. And I said, okay, y'all, this is what I'm telling you is the problem. This is why I'm disheartened into trying to make a real impact. Because in all honesty, I told Mr. Davis in a meeting once, and he followed up later and said he was disappointed in my saying it. But I have been working full-time since I was 14 years old. This is the first job I have ever had that I feel incompetent in working. And that's not a good thing for me, because I believe in operating in excellence. And day after day, I try. I mean, I've reached out to colleagues internationally. I travel through consulting work that I do, teaching people how to do culture responsive behavior interventions. And everything I teach is not working yet. Everything I've called specialists who train to do the same thing, trying to implement it, it doesn't work. And so the other thing we've decided to do, a couple of teachers and I, every morning we're on campus by 6:30, 6:45 at the latest, now praying and trusting that God will find a way to do what we are yet able to do. So I don't know what the answer is going to be, but I know the things that are happening in terms of what I see. I give a student a referral, that student goes out, they're back in the next day, same behavior. You know, left out cussing, come back in cussing twice as much, or telling me, you know, so what you think I ain't afraid of this, that, are you serious? You know, is this what you want? Or saying, you know, what you're saying doesn't make a difference to me because I don't want to be in here anyway. The only reason I'm here is because my mom made me come, my grandma made me come, or I'm sentenced to be here. The judge said I had to come to school. And so these things really impact an ability to be able to get to the academics. So those are the things that I see to me that are troubling, problematic, and at this point, really not sure of what an answer could be to change it other than what I'm really intentional about, and that's seeking God's hand to move to do something very different.
Thank you, Paul. So we've discussed our current changes in behavior management. And so we're here today looking at the PBIS, which stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. And we're going to divert our attention to that. So let's start with Dr. Shoemake. And Dr. Shoemake, why did you choose, or why did you allow PBIS to be in your school? And then how has it affected discipline and academics in your school?
Okay. Well, at Lamar Reese, we were the second cohort. We heard about the first cohort and how exciting it was. And as I stated before, I was a high school principal, so I went to a conference and another school presented PBIS, and it was just, again, music, awards, incentives, all of those good things, and the way that data was showing that they had significant decreases, shall I say, in office referrals. I said, wow, that is awesome. So at the high school, it was about the relationship that I had with my boys and girls. But then when I went to the elementary school, I want to say this because it is true. I really didn't have that many discipline problems, but the ones I did have, I wanted to implement that same program into Lamar Reese. When the offer came, we jumped on it. And again, how has it changed? Again, when you walk into that school, there is a climate that says, we love you. You are supposed to be here. Even during the hurricane, our children called the school to ask, when will school be open? There's a culture shift at Lamar Reese Magnet School of the Arts. So when you do walk in, and so I heard Miss Wiley. That's right, Wiley. Sorry about that. What we're trying to do at the elementary school is build a better elementary student, so that when they do go to middle school, that they will have those things in them when they do go up there. Yes, there are a whole lot of influences out there. Sometimes they change between schools. Yes, I do know that. But guess what? It's still going to take that relationship. When they know that you care about them. And let me go back to that high school. I had them every day coming in and out. But what made the difference, I said, report to me in the morning. Because I wanted to put something in them before they went on to class. And it was a positive something. Besides, I'm a motivational speaker. So I put all of that in my boys and girls. If there was something that popped off during the day, again, I'm the first face you need to come and find. Because building that made a difference. Watch. I did have some to go to the alternative school. But those were the same ones that would call the school and say, Dr. Shoemake, please help me. Tell me something positive. Again, because that's what I was known for. But at the same time, when graduation came, no one knew that my gang people were on the front row. No one knew that the ones who were suspended were on the front row. They knew my expectations. They knew that that was my turf. They knew how I felt about each one of them. So even at Lamar Reese, the little people, the rules, the expectation, consistently, they are said every day on the intercom, throughout the building. So again, it's just our culture, our climate. And I can't say it yet, but I just feel that when the data come out, we're a 5-star school because we have implemented some of these things.
Okay, thank you. parent, as a parent and PTO president, tell us what you think the PBIS system has done for children, and how do you think it has made an impact on behavior at school and at home?
Well, as a parent, when I take my children to school in the mornings, the first thing they look for is Dr. Jones, the parent facilitator. He's always, every morning he's standing out, opening the door, greeting children before they get out of the car, telling them to have a good day. And then even right when they get to the door at the school, we have another teacher that's there, greeting them with a smiling face. And it's just the other day, we had an incident with, where a child had a behavior issue, and I also help with the Boys and Girls Club after school. And instead of Dr. Jones writing that student up, he kind of called him to the side and redirected that student, and he called the other party that was involved, and instead of them getting disciplinary actions, we were able to talk with them and find common ground as far as, apologizing to one another and just speaking with the parents and letting them know what was going on between the two. Like Dr. Shoemake say, as far as the 5-star school, I feel what she's saying on that, because we have had less of having to send children home because they're being redirected. And my child, we see, when we got ready to do testing last year, we had a group that was out just giving the children pencils. And that was exciting to them, to see, someone just giving them positive reinforcement, encouraging them to go in the classroom and do well on their tests and stuff. And one thing that I use at home as a parent, when we get up in the morning, I always, put on some positive music and try not to start their day off negative. I try not to fuss in the morning. I try to start their day off positive. And when I drop them off, the last thing I say to them every single morning is, have a good day, I love you. And I try to give them that before they even enter the school, so they'll go into school with a positive mind. And I know that when I'm leaving them at the school, that they're going in and they're being given positive feedback and trying to be, everyone that they're coming in contact with is being positive to them as well. So that's my intake on it.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move to our high school people. We have a high school SRO and a high school literature teacher. All right, so we'll start with Officer James. All right, how do SROs use their relationships with students to ensure school safety? And how do you think school resource officers affect the climate in your school?
Well, recently, we had an incident that happened. I think Superintendent Dyer alluded to it earlier. We are practicing restoring justice in our system, and I can say it is very effective. Just recently, we had an incident where several students from different schools, 2 different high schools, and that was an altercation there. And some people wanted us to charge all of them with a criminal charge, which the criminal charge elements was there. But instead of doing that, we brought all the groups together along with parents, and we was able to resolve the issues. And to my knowledge, we haven't had any problem with those individuals that was involved in the altercation. So I think with that restored the justice program we did during that time was very effective, and we were able to see our children still in the school and they're still being a part of the athletic program, where we didn't make the case. As an SRO, our job is not to lock children up. We are a resource, that's what it is. Not only for our children, but for the parents. And most of our SROs, we get numerous of calls on duty and off duty from parents asking us legal questions. We are fortunate we got a department with probably over 100 years of experience We have at least 3 or 4 officers with at least 30 years plus in law enforcement. So we got a lot of resources. And we are not lawyers, but we are legal advisors that we assist with our children with legal issues, as well as the parents where they won't have to go pay their money to get a lawyer to ask those questions. But it is our goal and our intention and our purpose and vision is to help every child at the high school that we, all the schools that we have SROs in all middle schools and all high schools. And it's our purpose is to save every child in that school system without locking the child up. I'm assigned to one of the largest schools in the system, which is Westover High School. And even though I'm a graduate from Westover High School, we got the best high school in the city.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Wiley, 2 parts here. First, as a high school teacher, all right, what role does the teacher have in supporting positive behavior and trying to eliminate this school-to-prison pipeline? And then, as a teacher educator, all right, how can we bring this back to preparing teachers to be able to support positive behavior and divert this school-to-prison pipeline? So just in your 2 roles, how can we do this, you think?
In the first, as an educator, I think it's important, and even in what I do, one of the first things I started to do was what I teach teachers to do, look at the demographics, see what's happening with the children, understand, because at the heart of what I believe in any institution, it takes every social institution working together to make this thing work, whether it is looking at what the family needs to do, what the community and the church needs to do, as well as things with the school. And I began to notice that when I consider the age of the student and what I was seeing as the age of the parents, that there is truly a gap, a wisdom gap, a difference in values and principles from when that generation that I came along in, and what I'm even seeing in educators, and things as simple as saying good morning, building those relationships, as Dr. Shoemake talked about. Those are essential. And again, that's another one of the reasons I address students the way that I do every morning. While it's mandatory that we stay outside of our classrooms to make sure that students are shifting down the hall appropriately, I think it's also mandatory that we take time to speak to the students and to speak life to them. And so there's actually one student every day that I say, good morning, how you doing? Terrible. But his terrible answer has gone from being terrible to terrible with a smile. And one day, I was actually off, I was looking at something else, getting ready to address this young man about his attire, and I missed Mr. Williams when he walked by. And when we went in after the bell ringer, he said, I have something to say. And I'm thinking he's getting ready to respond to the bell ringer. You did ask me how my day was today. And I was like, Mr. Williams, I apologize. How was your day today? And he just burst out laughing. Terrible. And those things, I think, make a difference. And, even though I talked about the students, some of the students who gave me the hardest time when I got there in terms of disrespect, because like I said, I've never experienced disrespect at the level that I have in that environment. But they are some of the same students that once they realized I lived in the same neighborhood, attitude totally changed. Like, Dr. Wiley, you look over there, you in the hood? I said, baby, when I told you that you could pull up the project-ishness out of me, I meant that. I was raised behind my own project. I still live 2 streets over from M.L. King. What about that? You didn't believe? I thought you were just saying. I said, I'm for real, so trust me. It ain't gonna always turn out like you think it is. So when you telling other teachers this and another, Dr. Wiley ain't going anywhere. My address the same. I'll give it to you. Everything but my phone number, because you're not calling me. But you can knock on my door. You just might not want what you're going to get when you knock on that door. And so you have to speak some life into them. You have to make it relative and reach them where they are. And those kind of things, I think, are making a difference. And not be afraid to talk about what makes you who you are. And I tell them, the spirit of who I am, the soul of who I am is my spirit. That's what drives me. And you need to figure out maybe how to get you some of that. Figure out what it is that will drive you and change you. What you see is what you have to be. And so while we're dealing with standard-based learning and epiphany and all these other things, the real epiphany is figuring out how to reach your students to get them to understand academics and developing intellectually is one thing, but to develop your whole self, that you can first respect respect and appreciate who you see in the mirror, and that you have a responsibility and accountability beyond who you say you are, for the purpose that you have for sucking up space on this earth is one. And then in terms of dealing with educators, I will be eternally grateful for this experience at Monroe and thankful that Mr. Davis gave it to me, because now I think I'm a better professor in the classroom because I bring another level of education to them, that's something real that I can say that goes beyond just my expertise and scholarship of what I've been taught with theory. I have something to put with that theoretical understanding that I have. So now when I'm telling candidates and majors about lenses and the different types of lenses and talking to them about culturally relevant education and talking to them about philosophical engagement, I can give examples that make a real impact in terms of how that philosophical engagement needs to be appropriate and how you need to truly understand your space and place in dealing with students, because everything in a fit. And one thing I've always told educators, don't just get a job to get a job. Get a job because your philosophical location will align with the mission and the vision of that school, and that what you believe will align with that principle. If not, you're going to be eternally discomforted, and it's going to create some issues. And so even with deciding, after my sister just kept calling and people after I lost the race, school board race, if you really want to make a difference, why don't you consider going into classroom? That's really how I ended up there. And the only reason I went is because Monroe was on the south side, because that's where my heart is, working with marginalized individuals. So, okay, God, let's see if we can make a difference in this space. And so being able to talk to teachers about understanding the role that they have, the real impact that they can have in the student lives, and what the real challenges are going to be. Not paint a picture for them that will cause them to do what we're seeing in the academy, and that's lose teachers within their novice years or soon after their novice years because they're burnt out and they're tired. But helping them to see the real difference that they can make, or help them understand before they become a candidate that this might not be the walk that you really want to be walking, that you need to find a way to live out your purpose and your dream in another venue, because that's another thing. I think we have too many teachers who are taking up space that shouldn't be taking up that space. Right. We have a lot of 49.5ers who didn't do anything before they came 49.5, and they're creating even worse issues with a 49.5. And so those kinds of detriments, to call things as they are and to deal with the real problems that are creating ongoing systemic issues, and not being afraid to call things out that need to be called out. And I guess that's one of the things God has unfortunately called, I won't say unfortunately, but never had a problem with being able to do, and hope that in both spaces I continue to be able to help people to do that. So we create better environments for school systems and very better environments in our community, that people understand what their purpose is and how they really can be implementing that purpose in a purposeful and intentional way.
Good, thank you. All right. All right, and in an effort to stay on time, we're going to end with one final question for each of our panelists here. So very briefly, we'll just go down the table, starting with Ms. Mitchell. Speaking from your individual perspective, what is at least one concrete, achievable thing we can do as a community to dismantle this school-to-prison pipeline? Just one concrete thing from your perspective, from this parent. Sure, we'll move to the SRO officer. One concrete thing.
I think to build trust and love in our children.
One concrete thing.
Mm-hmm.
and he stole my one country
That must be the right thing here.
to build that trust, love, and as I always say, that relationship. And I know you told me that it was going to be brief, but I do want to say that you're going to ask us, do we have anything to say after this?
Go ahead.
Okay, good, thank you. Because I just want to make sure, Mr. Dyer mentioned something about PBIS and the incentives. I want you to know, once you build that culture, you will no longer need candy, crayons, ribbons, none of that. Why? Because it's built in, because they know you trust them, that trust, that love, that relationship, and consistency. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Dr. White?
I'm going to say what the connection here, but one thing is concrete. Let me say churches. Education started out with our churches, and that's one space where African Americans and most of who we have in our public school systems are African Americans, and so I'm going to particularly focus on that. But churches need to become more involved in what's happening because pastors have a greater impact on people's lives now, and I don't think that will change than anyone else. And so helping to educate parents on what needs to be done and giving them the skill sets and the tools that we need. Because oftentimes when people are talking about issues around that are associated with the prison to the school to prison pipeline, is we're expecting parents to do something that nowadays these parents don't have the skills to do. So we're expecting something from them that they just don't have. And so we have to have someone who's going to help impart that wisdom and give them the skills that they're going to need to be good parents. And I think the church is a great place to start that, but I also think they're beyond the parenting, the work that needs to be done in the community. Because there was a time in the projects that pastors and educators would come to the centers in the projects and would teach home economics, parenting skills, and those things don't happen anymore. But sometimes while we're so busy to throw out things from the past, we might need to go back and revisit some of the historical elements that truly build those strong foundations for which many of us are standing on today.
Okay. Last one.
And then Dr. Shoemake came and took mine. I was going to say building a relationship with the students, because if you don't have a relationship with them, you're not going to understand what they're going through and where they're coming from, and they're not going to be comfortable with coming to talk to you about any situation that's going on with them.
Thank you. So we have relationship, we have churches and religion, trust, and the community involvement there as well. So let's give our panel a hand. And again, I want to thank you all for participating. And I know this is Saturday. It was a good, cool Saturday morning. The bed was feeling pretty good. But thank you all for coming out and sharing your expertise and your perspectives on this most important issue. So,
our next breakout session. So the breakout sessions are right out this door to your right, my left. If you go out this door and make a left, there are two classrooms. And so in classroom 143 is going to be the PBIS discipline conversation about our school in Dougherty County Schools. And then 141, we're going to have a presentation from Phoebe Putnam Hospital and Albany Area Primary Health Care about some of the behavioral and physical health supports that we're providing for our children. So I want everyone to move from here out this door to the left